Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a todos aquí a nuestra iglesia de All Souls Church. De parte de nuestra alcaldesa Muriel Bowser, queremos darle también y reconocer a todas las personas que están acá y que se han hecho presentes. Como ustedes saben que el propósito de que estamos acá es porque todos recibimos el anuncio que se va a terminar el TPS. Y la alcaldesa ha tomado a bien a hacer estos foros comunitarios para decirles a ustedes que aquí en Washington, D.C. nosotros les vamos a respetar sus valores y sus derechos como seres humanos. Por eso tenemos aquí presente a nuestro Abdel Núñez de Carecen, Susana Popó de Ayuda, Julia Toro, una firma de abogados de Julia Toros, Kelly Hughes, from DC Affordable Farm, es una firma de abogados, Lady Pérez Davis, de Catholic Charities, Betsy Cavendish, nuestra Betsy Cavendish es la abogada de la alcaldesa, acá. She's our very own lawyer that the mayor has. And Thea Sebastian, I would like to recognize her hard work. We wouldn't be here, no estuviéramos acá si no fuera por toda la labor de Thea. Y todas las, ¿a quién más tenemos? ¿Alguien que Lilian de Carecen también, ¿verdad? Okay. And we have been joined por nuestra concejal, Brianne Doe, que está acá, que es nuestra concejal del Distrito 1. Y de todas las agencias del gobierno que los tenemos aquí abajo, también tenemos una lista de agencias que por A o por B razón ustedes van a lidiar. Y hay muchas preguntas, ¿qué es lo que va a hacer el gobierno cuando se termina? Pero tomen en cuenta que su alcaldesa, Muriel Bowser, va a estar con ustedes, no los va a dejar solos. Por eso es que es la directiva de ella, que en mi oficina trabajemos de ustedes con nuestras organizaciones sin fines de lucro, con las organizaciones así como la directora de legalidad, Betsy, para poder trabajar que todos nuestros derechos no sean violados. No importa, aquí nosotros les quiero decir que nosotros vivimos en un lugar de leyes y las leyes aquí se respetan y los seres humanos en Washington, D.C. se van a respetar. Así es que sin más en eso, le quiero presentar también a nuestra directora, abogada, Betsy Cavendish.
Gracias. Well, thank you, Jackie, and welcome everyone to All Souls Church Unitarian. This church is very special to me as I was married here in 1995, and it has a very special place in American history. This church was the place where Mayor Fenty signed into legislation our law allowing gay marriage long before the Supreme Court required that. This church was the site of organizing for the civil rights marches and freedom rides, and long before that, President John Quincy Adams founded this church, and he defended enslaved persons who rebelled and took over the ship Amistad. And today, in that tradition of civil rights, we are going to launch a quest for justice for people who are losing their TPS status. And we're going to mobilize attorneys and get you the help you need. And today, we're going to continue in the great tradition of All Souls Church to do that. I send my greetings from Mayor Bowser, who wants to tell you in no uncertain terms that even though it's a terribly hard and difficult and perilous and fraught time for immigrants in this country, that you are part of our community and you have nothing to fear from the D.C. government. There is much reason to fear from the federal government, but at the D.C. government, you can send your kids to school, you can call the police if you need help, you can enjoy the parks, and the D.C. government is here to help one and all. So with that, I'm going to be brief and turn this over to our councilwoman from Ward 1 here, Brianne Nadeau.
Great. Thank you so much. My name is Brianne Nadeau. I am the Ward 1 council member. This is Zoe. So this is Zoe's first TPS rally, but it will not be her last. Zoe also believes in sanctuary cities, so she's here with us. Thank you. We have to teach them young, right, about what right and wrong. And what I know as Ward 1 council member representing so many of you here is that what's right is to protect all of our residents in the District of Columbia, regardless of where they come from. One of the things that I cherish most about the job that I have is the diversity of the community that I represent. We have a beautiful history of welcoming immigrants and people of all faiths, races, and sexual orientations, of opening our minds toward one another and supporting each other here in the District of Columbia. And despite what's happening at the federal level, we in DC are a sanctuary city, and we are here for you. And you know, the federal government's closed today anyway, so, you know, we're still open for business here in the District of Columbia. That's right. Can tell ICE they can stay closed as long as they want. My own family immigrated to the United States several generations ago, fleeing religious persecution that Jewish people faced in Europe, and they built their lives here in America. And our country has always been a refuge to people under threat. So we will keep fighting for that America. And each of us has a responsibility now more than ever to stand up for our neighbors who are vulnerable against hate and bigotry. So that's why I'm here today, to show solidarity, to support you. I'm so glad to see our partners here. Last year, I joined with Carecen and CARE and with MLove to do several Know Your Rights seminars. So I'm really glad that we're continuing to do those across the city. I want to tell you, I have legislation that would create a permanent access to justice fund. It's time for council to pass that. We are hoping to move it in March because we know more than ever people need legal representation. I'm so proud of our mayor for getting that started, and council wants to keep it going. So hopefully we can pass my bill this year. I've already done some work to make it easier for people to renew their alliance benefits. We are now going to move a bill to help people with their mental health needs in our immigrant community, which of course, so much stress right now. We want everybody to have access to the mental health care that they need. And I just, I'm going to keep fighting for you all, so I just wanted to stop by today. As long as Zoe says it's okay, we'll be here. And to listen and to just show my support. So thank you, Directora, for allowing me to join you.
Gracias a todos por estar aquí presentes. ¡Sí se puede! Con ganas, ¡sí se puede! I'm going to continue in English because I know that we have interpretation, so just want to make sure, para todas las personas que van a estar con los intérpretes, ¿todos tienen el aparato? ¿Sí? Si necesitan, por favor, aseguren que chequean ahí porque queremos asegurar que todos entiendan. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands. So I want to thank everybody for coming. My name is Abel Núñez. I'm the Executive Director of the Central American Resource Center, Carecen. And we're an organization that have always fought for immigrants, for Central Americans that have come and made this community great. And so today we are under attack. But I really want to thank both the mayor, Brianne, all the allies that really have come together to show that this is truly a sanctuary city, a place where immigrants need not fear the federal government. And we know as we are trying to get better laws, we need to make sure that people on their day-to-day feel safe in their city and can thrive with their families. So to that end, today we have here a group of experts that really are going to talk about what's happening, what you can do, and then we're going to open it up to everyone to ask questions. And so I want to just, before I turn it over to the panel, I want to just highlight two things. One, that I want to thank all the allies that are here. And those are all the people that are not TPS, that are not DACA, that currently were either born here or are American citizens or are legal in this country and do not fear ICE. Thank you for coming in. Without you, we cannot do this. And we need everyone, we need all hands on deck to continue this fight. So thank you, and applause for you. Second, I want to thank, the hardworking immigrants that have come to learn of what the next steps are. We are in a very precarious situation because currently we have a president that really wants to limit immigrants from coming into this country, wants to help facilitate the process of the immigrants that are here to be sent back to their country of origin. And although he's been unable to pass laws in Congress, there's a lot of power that he has, and there's a lot of programs that are under his control, right? And so not only is TPS that's going to impact here us in Washington, D.C., and really the metropolitan area, but also DACA, because many of our families, and you know this, have TPS parents and DACA children. And so the devastation is going to be felt. We are integrated into this community. We work hard every day to make sure that this city runs and that people thrive. And I want to thank first also the city for all the efforts that they do to ensure that everyone is integrated here, from the healthcare they provide for everyone, from the driver's license, but for all the programs that everyone is able to access, and so that they can make their family thrive. So I just really wanted to give you a context of where we're at. Everybody knows, if you've seen the news, that government right now is deadlocked, and they are technically closed. And that is because they cannot pass a budget where DACA will be included. And we understand that TPS is not part of that, but we'll continue to fight to make sure that every immigrant gets benefited under this budget deal. But until it goes, it will be a little bit complicated. And so I think for us, it's important that everyone here continues to be in touch with organizations that are following the issue. But today we have here the defenders. And really, this is what this panel is. It's about the people that will be defending people. And we're transitioning now from a collective protection that is TPS and DACA to really a more individualized protection where we need to evaluate and make sure that people have paths to legalization. Now, we'll continue to work to do the advocacy at the local level, at the regional level, at the national level, to make sure that immigrants have the ability to stay and thrive and really make this country great again. So thank you, everyone, for coming in. Thank you for opening your ears, opening your minds. And I'm going to turn it over quickly to the panel, and they will tell us something. And once again, so we have Susan Volpe from Ayuda, Julia Toto from a law firm, private attorney, Richard Kelly from DC Affordable Law Firm, Lady Perez Davis from Catholic Charities, and Lilia Alvarez, our legal director from Carecen, that will give brief presentations, and then we'll open it up for questions. So without further ado, if you can start us off.
Hello. I am Julia Toro, and I work with am affiliated with the school BRIA. It's a free DC public charter school where you can learn English, and I help there with the students with their immigration problems. And the thing that I'd like to discuss right now with you is that we'll be talking about the renewal period for TPS, but it will not be extended again and will end in September of 2019. In September of 2019, you don't want to start thinking about what are you going to do with your family. You need to think about that right now. And you need to think about any other immigration law approaches you can take on your case, so that you think if you have any relatives that can petition you for a family visa. You think if that you have ever in the past, whether it be a month ago, a year ago, or 10 years ago, have been a victim of a violent crime, you are eligible to apply for a U visa. Those take forever. Do it now. You can also, worst case scenario, September 2019, TPS comes to an end. If you do not have an order of deportation in your background, the government would then place you in deportation proceedings. So there will be a process before getting formally deported. In those deportation proceedings, you want to get mail from the US government. You want to get the notice that is going to send you to court. so that you can go and speak with a judge. You should go speak with the judge and tell them why you should not be deported. There's cancellation of removal. If you've lived here for more than 10 years and you have U.S. citizen or permanent resident, parents, spouses, or children, or if you have the U visa pending, the judge can determine to postpone deporting you while you wait for the U visa, or if you have another family visa petition. So there are different alternatives to getting deported immediately. And we want you to be aware of that, and we want you to go seek counsel with a recognized, well-versed attorney that can explain to you what options you will have in the future after September 2019. But go seek that advice now. Do not wait. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lady Perez Davis, and I'm one of the staff attorneys at Catholic Charities. I wanted to speak a little bit about just kind of continuing on with what Julia said in regards to the September 2019 termination date. So we, as a panel, and we as attorneys really would like to stress the importance for everybody to renew their TPS. It is, I mean, it's not going to be extended past September unless there's some sort of congressional action. But you do have to re-register this final time. It's our recommendation that you also are applying for the work permit along with the re-registration. And so the re-registration period for El Salvador has already started. It's from January 18th to March 19th, and so it is currently open. This is the time to re-register. This is the time to apply for the work permit so that you are able to have the work permit until that September 9th, 2019 date. The work permits that you have now, so the people that have TPS now, the work permits are auto-extended through September 5th of this year, but that does not mean that you guys should not be re-registering and should not be reapplying for the TPS for that final year from now until September 9th of 2019. That's the only way that you, with TPS, will be able to work in the United States legally and just continue your life in the United States legally until and unless you are working with an attorney and there's another possible immigration solution for you and your family. So we just want to stress the importance of going to speak with lawyers. There are many people that have been living in the United States and have never spoken to a lawyer. There are options out there that my co-panelists will speak on, but we just want to make sure that we stress to you the importance of not only re-registering, but reapplying for that work permit until September of next year. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Lilia Alvarez, and I'm the legal director with Carecen. And the topic I'm here to discuss with you briefly is the issue of employment authorization. So when you re-register your TPS status, it's very important that you choose to also apply for your work permit. However, you are given a choice. So if you didn't want to do that, that is your choice, but we highly recommend that you not only re-register your TPS, but also reapply for the work permit. There is a $410 fee that immigration charges, plus $85 for the fingerprints. So it's a grand total of $495 to do it all. But we, again, highly recommend it. During the period of time that it takes for you to apply and also for the work permit to come back to you in the mail, we are offering at Carecen letters to employers. So you can come into our front desk and we have a letter from myself giving the press release of the notification of TPS being extended up to what date, also the Federal Registry. This is all information that you will need because employers will not be notified by USCIS that you have this automatic extension. Also, you won't receive anything in the mail telling you that you have this automatic extension. However, during the time period that it takes for you to come to our offices, re-register, have it be sent in, have USCIS, immigration, reply to you, get your biometrics, take the picture, get the card in the mail, it can be up to 4 months easily. So during that time period, if your TPS card has already expired and that date shows that it's no longer valid, don't let your employer get away with doing anything discriminatory. They do not have the right to fire you if that's the case. They do not have the right to harass you about it. You just have to let them know it's been auto-extended and here's a letter telling you that from a legal professional, from Carecen, for example. Other legal professionals can do the same service, but that's something that we do at Carecen, and the letters are available for people from Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Haiti. You know, it's just explaining legally to employers. Very important also, as you decide to do this, don't wait until the deadline. Again, it takes time to re-register and to get the work permit back, but more importantly, immigration has to receive your application by the deadline. So if they don't receive it, you'll be out of luck. So just do it right away. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susanna. I work at IUTA. I have 2 things that I want you to remember after you leave today. I'm going to quiz you, so remember. Sorry. I talk quickly. I'm going to remember to talk slow. The first thing, get a consultation, okay? Every case is different. I'm different from Abel, is different from Richard, different from Lady and Lilia. Everyone has a different story of how they got here, who their kids are, who their parents are, what jobs they've had, and all of that matters, okay? So you need to get an individual consultation, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, when TPS ends, you don't get deported right away. You get to stay, and you go back to whatever was happening before TPS started, okay? So it may have been that you were applying for asylum, you may have had a petition from your mom, you may have just been here undocumented, living your life in the United States, but you go back to that same status, okay? So there are 2 things. What's number 1? Anybody? Consult. Get a consultation. Number 2. What's number 2? What happens to your status? You go back to what it was before, right? That's not the same as getting deported right away. But like everyone said, you have to be prepared because you go back to what it was before, but you want to make sure that you have good options for yourself going forward. So there's something, who's heard of advanced parole? Advanced parole? Does anyone who's heard of it want to say what it means? Advance? Yeah. Exactly. It's when you travel with permission to come back, right? So can people with TPS travel? But what do they need? Parole, permission, right? So advanced parole is important because when you get advanced parole, you leave and you know that you're going to be able to come back, and when you come back, you enter legally. And there are a lot of different immigration options that require you to have a legal entry. So you can make that legal entry for yourselves by getting permission to leave and come back into the United States, okay? So that's one really important thing, that when you do number 1, which is go to your consultation, you're gonna talk to that person about advanced parole, right? So that when number 2 happens, which is you go back to the same status, right? You have a new legal entry that's gonna open new doors, okay? So the other less important things that I'm going to say, so you've given me 2 minutes, so now you can space out for a little bit before I hand the microphone to Richard, is cancellation is really important to think about. It's for people who've been in the United States for 10 years, who may have a US citizen or permanent resident, parent, child, or spouse, okay? So when you go talk to that lawyer in that number 1 consultation, you're going to talk about your kids, and you're going to say, I have a kid who's in the United States, and you're going to talk about how it would affect your children if you didn't get to stay in the United States. You can also think about asylum. Asylum's a great option if you're afraid to go home, right? Honduras, El Salvador are countries that have a lot of problems right now, right? Maybe there are things that have happened to your families over there. These are all important to talk about in your consultation so that the person that you're talking with knows how to talk to you about asylum, right? And lastly, you also want to think about family-based options. So if you have children who were born in the United States who are now permanent residents, or who are U.S. citizens, or spouses, or parents who are permanent residents or citizens, think about that in your consultation. And lastly, this is an area that I don't have a lot of familiarity with because my practice is mostly deportation, defense, and family-based immigration or humanitarian immigration options, but there are work visas, okay? If you have a specialized trade, if you are an electrician, if you know if you are a nurse, if you've gone to school and gotten certain degrees, you need to talk to a lawyer about how to get a visa based on those degrees, because that may also be an option. And the last thing that everyone said, re-register, right? Everyone going out of here has to get a consult and re-register, right? Yeah, I got too many numbers here. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm passing the microphone.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Kelly. I'm here from the DC Affordable Law Firm, and we do a number of different things. We exist to expand access to justice for individuals. So we work with lower income individuals. We've been doing a lot in immigration as of late, and I was invited to talk a little bit about how to prepare around family and issues around financial power of attorney. So the reality is that a lot of people in this room have been living in the United States for a very long time, which means we've planted roots here. We have bank accounts, we have property, we have children. And so it's really important as we look for options, and everyone on this panel wants to make sure we're helping you figure out what that best option for you to stay is, if that's what you want. We also have to plan for the reality of what are the things in our life that are impacted if we don't get to stay or if we have a temporary leave for some reason or another. And so what I want to talk about is two very important but separate things. The first is custody, children. The first being, if you have a child and the child was born in the US or is a US citizen, some of you may have never thought to get that child a passport because there's no reason if they're not traveling. You may want to explore that option, particularly if there might be travel in or out of the country, because if the child has a US passport, they'll be able to travel back and forth easily. And so that's one option that may need to be considered if you haven't already done that. And for young kids, there might be a reason, there was no reason to get them a passport beforehand. You might be considering that. The other is that when you go to that consultation, if you have minor children, you may want to talk about what options are available. There are a lot of out-of-court options, things like custodial powers of attorney, that might allow you to plan for those just-in-case things. There's a lot of uncertainty right now because of the federal government, and that brings a lot of fear. And so having a conversation in that consultation about ways of being able to protect your children and making sure that they're taken care of, or making sure that, particularly if there's a sudden or unexpected unavailability, that someone's able to take care of them, is a really important plan in planning for what could happen during this time. The second is financial, and in the same way, there's out-of-court opportunities to create financial plans, because even if you're able to resolve issues, if you're temporarily unavailable to take care of things like bank accounts or property, that can have a devastating impact even if you come back to the United States and everything's fine. And so there's also some planning that you can do to really make sure that you're thinking through how to make sure things like property or bank accounts are taken care of if there is some sort of temporary unavailability due to immigration processes. So in that consultation that I hope you all know you guys should do, and thanks to the DC Mayor's Grant, a lot of places are able to offer those for free right now. We encourage you to really think through how are we planning around the things that are most important to us in our lives to make sure that regardless of what the uncertainty is, those things are taken care of. We have plan Bs and plan Cs around those things.
Bueno, un applause for our panelists. We want to begin with a set of questions, and I've been grouping them together. And what I will do is I will turn it over to the panel so that they can answer them. But the actual first questions that I have is actually for the city, because one of the questions is, and Betsy, like Jackie said, the lawyer of the mayor is going to come and answer. And the questions are, one, what does it mean to be in a sanctuary city? And two, would the city provide driver's license for those TPS beneficiaries that lose TPS?
Thank you. There's no one legal definition of a sanctuary city, but DC is a sanctuary city, and by that we mean that we don't use our police force to supplement the services of the federal ICE. So our police will never ask you about your legal status. If you get in trouble with our police, it's because you did something wrong here. But if you're a victim of a crime and you're robbed or you're a victim of domestic violence, you can talk to the police and they won't question you about your legal status. We don't turn you over to ICE, too. So we also provide services, government services to people whether or not they have legal status. So you can get a special purpose driver's license. It's not the same kind of driver's license that's good for identification on airplanes, but you can drive here legally. And someone from the director of the Department of Motor Vehicles is downstairs, and so at the fair, she and a staffer can talk to you more about those provisions. So we have not entered into an agreement with the Federal Immigration Service to share law enforcement resources for federal immigration enforcement. Now, that said, we provide as much protection as possible to people regardless of status here. But sanctuary to some people means it's perfect protection. But we can't offer perfect protection because we can't kick the federal government out of the District of Columbia. So you're still vulnerable to, if you're not here legally, you may still be vulnerable to ICE, and we can't help with that. But we do as much as we can to protect you under DC law.
Thank you for that answer. And we have to remember that it's not just about what DC does, but the federal government has been threatening all municipalities that claim to be sanctuary cities, even threatening to put his elected officials in jail. So just to remind us that the attacks are real. But I want to turn over to the questions we have. Thank you so much. They're incredible questions. I have sort of grouped them, so I'm going to turn them over to the panelists, and they can take them as they see fit. So there's one sort of chunk of questions that talk specifically, and a lot of them came up, about the possibility of TPS beneficiaries or people being petitioned by employers. So the question kept coming up in many instances. You know, can my employer petition me? Can I do a work visa? So I'm going to turn it over, and if the panelists, whoever wants to take this, can answer that. And just a preface. So just to be clear, the panelists here can only give general statements. This is not legal counsel. I just want to make sure that that's clear. They are not giving you legal advice because that requires a different mechanism. You don't do that in public, but you can get more specific information because a lot of our organizations are going to be in the basement, and you can ask more personalized questions. So what they're going to answer is going to be in general terms. So I just want to make sure that people understand that. So panelists, if you want to answer it.
I will approach to answer it first if any of my colleagues want to add anything. You cannot be petitioned by an employer today under the current law unless you were previously petitioned prior to April 30th, 2001. And that is a section of the law that people are familiar with called 245I. And so if you were petitioned by an employer or a family member prior to April 2001, and even if that case died or the company went out of business and you couldn't follow through on a petition for you previously, you are protected under 245I, and perhaps you may have that available to you. but other employer petitions are also based on degrees and other experience. So I'll see if any of my other colleagues want to add to that.
I agree with Julia entirely that if you have an old petition from an employer or from a family member, use it. Those are still real. Those petitions don't die. They just sit there. You can bring it back, maybe, okay? And that maybe is where you're going to go to that consultation and figure out whether your maybe is a, yeah, use it or not, okay? The other part is, depending upon your skills, depending upon your education, depending upon your job, you may be eligible for a petition based on your employment. You must maintain lawful status until you use that petition. Not all petitions are valid the day they're filed. So there's a big long wait. Everyone says, get in line, right? That's because there's a wait to have a petition become a visa, right? You can file, you can say, I'm ready, I have this thing. But you can't use it to get your visa until it's your turn, right? Work petitions are the same. You can file, but you can't use it until it's your turn. While you're waiting for your turn, you need to have lawful presence in the United States. So that's why my made-up number 3. What's number 3 from my pop quiz before? Re-register, right? Re-register. Re-register, so you keep your lawful status, right? Because you may be eligible for a work permit, but you need lawful status. And the other important part is you need a lawful entry. So that's why you need to do advanced parole. So you can leave and come back legally, and you create that lawful entry for yourselves. That's it.
All right, so there's a couple of buckets, and I'm actually going to turn it over to the panelists, but there are some actually specific questions that came up. And there were several questions if, is it recommendable for TPS beneficiaries right now to travel outside of the U.S.?
So, yeah, it is recommended if you have advanced parole and only if you have advanced parole. So if you have done it before and you already have that lawful entry into the United States and you don't want to take that chance, that's fine. But for those people that entered without inspection, so they came through the border and they have never traveled outside of the United States, if you have TPS right now, we recommend that you try and do advanced parole, but do not leave if you have not gotten that approval of advanced parole. My colleague just made a really good point as well. For those people that have orders of deportation, when you go do that consultation, you need to advise the lawyer about that because there are other things that you need to take into consideration. So go speak with the lawyer individually. There's a lot of different scenarios that can play out. So yes, we advise to travel if you haven't done so, only if you have permission from the government to come back in.
Then there was another technical question of when is the registration period, because they were mentioning it.
So we have two similar ones, Nicaragua and Honduras. The deadline to re-register, I like my notes better. Let's see. The deadline to re-register is February 13. But don't wait until that day. Again, immigration has to have it in hand by that time, so just make sure to do it before. And then for El Salvador is until March 19, 2018. So really, there should be a lot going on right now or in February. Everybody should get it done as soon as possible.
And remember, with the DACA registration period, when they ended or they gave the announcement, there were a lot of forms that were held back by the post office and they weren't received and were rejected by USCIS. So the earlier you get it in, the better. The Salvadoran community has always been good about applying early, so we need to continue that effort. There is one group of questions here that sort of ask, well, what happens after September 2019? What happens to my house? What happens to my children? What happens to, if, someone even said my business? Basically, what is going to happen to them?
Sure. I can grab this question, or at least start out, and people can offer. This is why it is so important that, first of all, you re-register so that you have till September 2019. But that during that time, while you are in that consultation and seeking options for how you can stay, that you are also making plans around family and around businesses. There are a lot of options, and certainly I think each case is very different. But a lot of that can be done through out-of-court powers of attorney that can assign specific people abilities to do things on your behalf, so that you have a plan in place in case you're unavailable for whatever portion of time.
Also, I'd like to answer that question on the legal side, where should the TPS end permanently September 2019? If you had re-registered, the government will have your address, and you want to get mail. You want to get mail from them to know that, that if you're going to be placed in removal proceedings. If you're placed in removal proceedings, you want to see a judge. You want to speak with a judge, and you should have counsel to help you with that, because there may be a form of relief for you in court that you don't have today. There are certain forms of relief that you can only ask when you are in the process of deportation. One we've already mentioned twice, called cancellation of deportation, cancellation of removal, so that you have to prove that you've been here for 10 years. You have to prove you have parents, spouse, or children who are citizens or legal permanent residents. You need to prove if they suffer from any mental health illnesses and how they would suffer if you get deported. So that is why in this panel also, we are reminding everyone, re-register for TPS and do it now, and prepare now for next year should you have to prove how many years you've lived here, that you've paid your taxes, that you have no criminal record, your children's school records, that they are in school, anything that you go to your church and you are a member of the community in your church. So keep going. Be active with your kids in school. Be active with your churches, okay? Continue living the lovely life that you have had here. And keep record of all of that. And know that worst case scenario, you're going to need to get all your tax records. You're going to need to get all your medical records and those of your children and spouse. All of those things are very important.
All right, so I'm gonna prep the panel here, because this is sort of the biggest sort of number of questions that we got, and they vary. And if you just give me a minute, I'll try to lay them out. But it's really, what's the path to legal permanent residence? And so there were multiple questions around this, and they so I want them to address as they were asked. One, is there an ability for me to become a legal permanent resident because of the time that I have spent in the U.S., because I have a business that employs people? Does asylum, even though I've been here more than a year, still qualify? If I have an illness that is incurable, does that give me a path to legal permanent residence? And there are many that were asked that have children here at multiple ages, and would that in of itself allow me, or how can that allow me to become legal permanent resident? And if there's anything that I missed here, because they were very good questions, if there were other avenues for legal permanent resident, the basic question is, how can I go from a temporary protective status beneficiary to a legal permanent resident? So I'll open it up to the panel.
So I'm going to begin the discussion by reminding us that every case is unique. There is not going to be an answer that we can give today that's going to apply to everyone. But just in general terms, absolutely there is a path to becoming a lawful permanent resident if you've been here more than 10 years. As other colleagues have already expressed, that's not a path that exists outside of court. That only exists once a person is placed in removal proceedings and they get to face the judge. And that's an application that can be filed in immigration court. So for that reason, being that we're facing this situation, it's very important to know our options and not be scared about going to immigration court. Because if you have to battle it out in court, then so be it. Then if you don't like the decision the trial judge gives, you can appeal. And you can just really continue to fight your case. But in order to do that, you have to get mail, you have to be courageous to seek help, go to a legal consult, and have the assistance that you need. When it comes to a business, similarly, those are all ties to the community. We call them community equities that can be linked also in a case in court. When it comes to asylum, asylum is one of those case types that other colleagues will say more what their thoughts are, but as far as the research that Carecen has done alongside with Richard and the DC Affordable Law Firm, we do find precedent in the federal regulations that allow TPS holders to apply for affirmative asylum even past the 1-year bar, even past the 1-year mark. That's because as TPS holders, you have had lawful status through that time, and depending on when your last entry to the United States was, that's where the clock begins to tick. So if within your TPS permit, you traveled abroad, for example, and you have that proof of advanced parole, then really the clock doesn't begin, for the 1-year bar doesn't begin until 6 months, a reasonable period of time after TPS has expired. So we're asking people to get the consultation, see if you are within the parameters required to apply for affirmative asylum. And the question about illness, similarly, if you have someone who's a US citizen or a lawful permanent resident that needs your support, that's something that would come up also in cancellation of removal in court. And lastly, with children, this is a more complicated situation because if you're someone who has a lawful entry, your last entry to the United States was lawful with advanced parole, and you have a US citizen child who's 21 years or older, you are effective right now, ready to file for adjustment of status. You can do that. But if you have children who are maybe 18 years old or maybe 16 years old, there's a gap of time there, right? Where even though you last enter legally and that advanced parole doesn't expire, that last lawful entry, that proof doesn't expire, and you would be eligible to adjust status, you wouldn't until that US citizen child or US citizen spouse, an immediate relative, can petition you. And a child is only ready to petition a parent until they're 21 years or 21 years old or older.
So I agree with a lot of what my colleague said. I just want to make sure to clarify one small part. So briefly, many of you might be aware of what asylum means. And we've talked a little bit about withholding of removal as an option. There's a reason why immigration attorneys will talk about asylum, and that's because it offers a path to citizenship, where withholding of removal does not. So it sometimes offers different benefits to individuals. Asylum is basically saying, I have a reasonable fear of going back to my home country because of something the government might do or the government won't prevent from happening to me based on a certain part of my identity or a certain group I belong to. So maybe it's that my family has been targeted for something, a variety of things. when we talk about this reasonable time, I just want to really encourage people. You can put in, if after a consultation it sounds like a good idea based on you and your attorney, you can apply for affirmative asylum much earlier than 6 months after. You don't have to wait till your TPS expires. And because of how the law talks about this reasonable time, it's our encouragement that, with the advice of an attorney and after deciding that's a good potential path forward for you, that you actually do that as soon as possible. So if you think that that might be an option that makes sense for you, I would echo Susanna here and say, go to that consultation, mention that, and try and start that process as early as possible, because that can be a really helpful process. And the judges can be pretty strict sometimes about how they interpret one-year bars and reasonable time, and you don't want to be stuck in a moment where you have a great case for asylum, but because of the wait time, they decide not to move it forward.
So there's like you put 5 lawyers in a row and you have 5 different answers, right? So we all have something to say about this question. But something really important too is that a lot of the things that we're talking about have a part that is you have to have A, B, and C to qualify, and you have to win discretion, okay? So you have to show A, B, and C to put your application in, and then you need to get to USCIS or you need to get to the judge, and you need to convince them you deserve it, essentially, okay? So there are 2 parts. Something important to remember is that when you put your application in, some of these applications allow you to get a work permit while you're waiting, okay? And so immigration court right now, does anyone have a guess of how many cases there are waiting for trial in immigration court? How about 5,000? Any takers? 15,000, 25,000, 100,000, 500,000. There are over 500,000 cases waiting for trial right now, okay? It takes a long time to see a judge. So if you qualify with A, B, and C, you get your work permit and you wait. And you collect your documents, and you work with your lawyer, and you prepare so that when you go to court that day to say, these are the reasons I really need to stay in the United States, you have everything ready, but you've also had a work permit. And you've also been living your life, and you've been going to your PTA meetings at school, and you've been paying your mortgage, and you've been having your life while you're waiting for this court hearing, okay? So the other thing I want to address, and people have talked about having United States citizen children and what that means. There's a difference in which door opens if your children are under 21 or over 21. Does anyone know why 21 is a magic age in immigration? If you're a US citizen, what can you do when you turn 21 for your parents? Huh? Help them. How do you help them? You petition for them. You can't do that until you're 21, okay? So there's a difference if your children are over 21 or under 21 for what they're going to be able to help their parents who are TPS holders to do. Another question that we had was about whether immigration takes into account if a family member has disabilities or has special needs. And there's no automatic visa that gives, but that's important to mention in any visa application because it will change some of the factors that you need to show. It'll change, instead of A, B, and C, you need to show A, B, and D, right? So it just changes things, and it's really important that when you do number 1, which is, yay! When you go to your consultation, you tell the person that you consult with about that.
So can you address, some of the questions were, well, I've been here 20 years. I've been here 30 years. I haven't committed a crime. I've paid my taxes. Do I qualify for anything? Can you answer that?
Tell me more.
That's all they said. I've been here for a long time. There's no other information. Do they qualify just because they've been here a long time?
Yeah, I just want to state that you do not. Just the fact that you've been here forever does not make you eligible for status. You have to have a family member petition for you, an employer petition for you, or you have to declare a fear for your life if you should get deported back to your country. So unfortunately, that does not help you. But if you are able to submit an application to immigration, yes, all those years will benefit you. And you have to prove it on paper. They need lots of paper to know that you have a family, that you have children in school, that you have helped another family member and support them during their health needs and problems, that you have paid your taxes and contributed to your church and your local community. So all those things will be important when it is you are able to submit a petition to the government and you are able to ask to remain here permanently.
A variation of that, I've been here a long time, I have an illness, I'm sick, and I don't think I can get that coverage in my country. Can I stay? And that's the answer.
No, unless anyone else has another response, just because you are sick, you are the foreign immigrant who is here in the United States, you cannot claim that. However, your family will suffer emotionally if you get deported and you won't get the health care you need for your cancer, or you don't get the health care you need in order to obtain dialysis for your kidneys. So you can show and prove that your family will suffer seriously emotionally, and that can have physical health repercussions if you were deported. But just because you are ill and you're the foreigner who would be deported, they don't even consider how bad your illness is. That is unfortunate and sad, but that will not keep you here. But you prove how that would affect your family, then that could help you.
It's just a slight variation on that. I think in and of itself, that's not there. But as you can see, lawyers try to be creative, which is part of why you go to that consultation. In what way can that find you status? So another way, and I particularly work with individuals who are HIV positive or LGBTQ individuals, there might be discrimination based on that illness in your country, or discrimination based on a disability that you might have, and that can open up other paths as well. So again, each case is very different. There's no path to citizenship because I'm ill, but there might be paths to some sort of status based on something might be happening to you or your family because of that illness or disability.
The other thing that I want the panelists and anyone can take it here. So it's, you know, they have 18 months and people are very concerned. They're very asking questions. So they're looking for help. We are here to help. And downstairs, there are other organizations that have a trajectory of helping the community. But what are the pitfalls that people can fall if they don't go to the right person? And preferably notarios.
Yeah. So I want to make clear for this point. Notarios in the United States are not lawyers, and they are not authorized to practice law in the United States. In our communities, in most Central and South American countries, notarios are attorneys, and so there is a huge, huge problem in our community with people trusting notarios to take on their immigration case. Notarios can translate in the United States. They can notarize documents in the United States. A lawyer could be a notary, but just a notario is not authorized to take your re-registration. They're not authorized to go to court with you. Notarios in the United States, and I'm going to say it as many times as I can because it's a huge, huge problem in our community. They are not attorneys. So when you go speak, when you go to that consultation, you are allowed to ask the person what their qualifications are. Do they have a law degree? Are they what's called a BIA accredited representative? Those are the only two types of people, so to speak, that are allowed to help you with your immigration case.
El notario just promised me legal permanent residence. What are the consequences for me if I believe it?
If a notario incorrectly tells you that you can file your papers with immigration and you cannot, and your case will be denied, then that will get you placed in deportation proceedings. So you are giving money to the government, and you're giving money to a notario who's going to disappear, and then you're going to be sitting in court in front of a judge who cannot help you because there is nothing that you can do under the law as it's written today to remain here. So that is a grave risk, and it can jeopardize not only you, but your family in the US and your family abroad. Because when someone can do their papers, it's not just for that individual. Their entire family will benefit, and their family abroad can be helped in the future. So it's very dangerous to go to a notario because they can put you in greater trouble that no lawyer can then get you out of. So it is very dangerous and risky.
And to follow up on that, what Abel asked is, the notario promised me I'd get my papers. Nobody who you should trust to do your immigration papers will ever promise you an outcome. Because we can't tell you. We can do our best, we can help you prepare, we can put together all the right documents, but it's not our decision. Ultimately, there's that other part, that discretion part, where we need to convince a judge that you deserve the benefit that we can't make promises about. So anybody who promises you, I got this, don't believe them, they're lying.
So, you know, they're going to be here. There are other providers that are downstairs that can help if you have more specific questions. But I actually want to end our time with our panelists here with a question that was submitted, and it said, and I want every panelist to, if they can take a couple minutes to answer this, and it's the ones that have TPS. What is it that we need to do during the next 18 months of protection? What do we do after the 18 months to apply so that we are prepared for both the 18 months and after the 18 months? So I would like all of you to actually answer that, and we can begin ending this part.
So the number one, I'm like a broken record, guys. What's number one? Yes, get a consult. Because what happens after 18 months? You go back to where you were before TPS. So what do you need to do right now? Re-register. There we go. That's what you need to do to prepare right now. When the 18 months happens, hopefully you'll have a plan, and you'll be able to figure out with your family, with your lawyer, with your representative moving forward what's best for you and your family.
To add briefly to that, I think as we all do those things, honestly, I think it's important to continue to live your life. There's going to be a result. There's going to be an outcome. You have a lot of people who are willing and ready to advocate. But ultimately, the next 18 months and the next after shouldn't be a nightmare, right? It should be a cautious and thoughtful approach, doing all these things, getting your consultation, doing everything you can. But this is your home. It's your life. And so I think I would encourage you all to continue to live into your community, to live in your space. And that, in an ironic way, can actually help your case. Because if you disconnect with your community now, that might actually be worse if you actually do end up in front of an immigration judge, where if you demonstrate your continued commitment to the life you have, that can actually be a plus.
I want to really, again, stress the importance of having a competent assessment of your case. At Carecen, we take walk-in we do walk-in consultations Monday through Wednesday, and we now have the ability to assist 20 people in the morning, 20 people in the afternoon. So it's 40 people on Monday, 40 people on Tuesdays, and 40 people on Wednesdays. So you should not be shy about coming to Carecen. We're just literally not even a block away from here. So please come in, sign in, and we will assist you. It's also, I think, very real, the fact that people are afraid of losing their jobs if they don't have the work permit. So for that reason alone, it's very important to seek legal advice and really look at the options that could potentially grant you a work permit while you're waiting to hear from the judge or to hear from USCIS. Affirmative asylum is one of those potential reliefs where you would get a work permit if you qualify, but you have to time it right. And that's what we've been telling people, right? Don't wait until the very end to get the assessment, because it takes 6 months of an asylum application pending before you qualify to apply for a work permit, and the work permit can take 3 months to arrive. So you're looking there easily around 9 months of preparation before you can, overlap the 2 work permits. So just really reach out. I was told to give you our information. We are at 1460 Columbia Road, Suite C1, and our phone number is 202-328-9799.
I want to, again, echo a lot of what my colleagues have said, but I also want to tell you guys the importance of being honest and bringing paperwork from 10, 20 years ago to the consultation with the lawyer. Sometimes I start the consultation and the person says, I've only been here 1 time, and then by the end of the consultation, actually they were deported to Mexico, but trust us to figure out the issue. Your job is to tell us the truth. Your job is to tell us your story, because that's the way that we can represent you the best. So again, I'm echoing going to consultations, but come prepared. Bring your documents. If you've ever been in immigration proceedings, if you have a removal order, bring the documents that you have. For the documents that you don't have, there are ways to get it, but it takes some time. So if you have documents already, then save yourself and us the time so that we may assess your case in the best way possible. And I am at Catholic Charities, the Archdiocese of Washington. We have actually 5 offices, but the main headquarters office is at 924 G Street in Northwest. So we have consultations on different days depending on the office, and all of our information will be downstairs, and you can get the 5 separate offices if you can't come on the consultations on Tuesday at the headquarters. Thank you.
I'd like to agree on the documentation level. It is very important every time I have a consultation with someone that they have the papers necessary for me to assess their case properly. So, right now, as you listen to me speak, why don't you picture in your home a place, a drawer, a box, where you can put all your papers, put all your tax returns, put your children's birth certificates, put health records that you already have, and your children's school records. Right now, picture in your head a drawer or a box that you can put under your bed and save all those documents. You will need all those documents later when you do any other papers or any other applications in front of immigration, or if you ever find yourself in front of an immigration judge. If you have U.S. citizen children, please go and apply for their passports. You're not going to be traveling now. I'm not wanting to put any fear in you that you're going to need to go anywhere soon, but go get that U.S. passport for your child. It does take weeks or months, and have it. It is good to have it because worst case scenario, you're going to need it at the last minute and you're not going to get it, and then one of the parents won't be here. I suggest people get their U.S. passports for their children. Make sure you comply with filing your taxes. It's January, and we're going to have taxes now that we have to file in these coming months, so make sure you have an accountant you can trust. And everyone who has TPS, you're all the members that we want to maintain here in the United States. You have no felony criminal records. There may be a misdemeanor in the background, but keep obeying the law as you always have. I don't expect anything less, but it's very important. Stay out of trouble. And if you don't have a driver's license, don't drive. We have fantastic public transportation. People are using bikes instead of cars for exercise. Take a bus and take the metro. Do not drive if you don't have a license. All these things are very important to keep in mind, and do save all your documents for the day that you're going to need it for that consultation that you're going to go get now and not next year. Thank you.
Well, I want first to thank all of you for being here and for asking incredible questions. I know that some of the questions we didn't get to, but they were really specific, and for that you need consultations, as was clearly stated here. But please, a round of applause for the panelists. I'm gonna ask Julio to come and say some last closing words for this section, but before he takes the mic, I just want to say just a couple of parting thoughts. One, that you're not alone, that we are here, we will continue to be here to accompany you throughout this entire process. Two, as TPS ends, it is not the final part of your journey. It will continue, there will be other mechanisms. And then third and most important, politicize. This is the moment that you have to speak up and stand up. It is no longer acceptable for us to just wait for what is to come. We have to be the masters of our destiny, and we can only do that if we politicize, if we become active, and we demand that we stay in this country. So thank you very much. Thank you to the mayor, and thank you to the city government for doing this.